Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero. Our guest today is Eric Hunley. He's the host of the podcast Unstructured, where, as advertised, he has unstructured conversations with some of the world's most interesting people. Sound familiar? Well, Pete was recently a guest, and he was unstructured on there, too. Eric's show is solid and established with over 100 episodes and some guests we'd all recognize besides Pete. It's a good show. You should check it out, unstructuredpod.com or whatever app you're listening to us on, too. In the co-pilot's chair with O. Pedro is Jason Piccolo, who guested with us just a few episodes ago, and he's on TV and podcasts all the time, so the three of them discuss interview technique and tell podcast stories and go way inside. It's a fun look at the machinations and the business of media that's unique, and we think you'll enjoy it. So get your ear holes ready for Pete, Jason Piccolo, and our guest today, Eric Hunley.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is Jon Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Eric Hunley of the Unstructured Podcast, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with Jon Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun episode. So 3 different podcast hosts all talking about the craft of interviewing and podcasting and whatnot. Eric's got a legit show. He's had guests like we've had, well, heck, we put Jason Piccolo up today. You had Jason Piccolo about 2 weeks ago. You've had Jordan Harbinger. We've also had Jordan Harbinger on a couple of times. So we share a lot of taste in guests, and I've been on your show. I've been on the Unstructured Podcast, and it's always an honor to get invited to folks' shows. So thank you, one, for having me. Thank you for coming on my show. And I'm looking forward to just sort of digging into how we do what we do, just to give the audience a little look behind the podcast curtain, because there's a lot of folks out there doing this, and everybody kind of has the desire to do it. So let's give them an idea of what that takes. What do you think?
Sure, sounds great, man. And thanks a lot for having me on, seriously.
Oh, no problem. And then my co-host, who's about to come into studio here, is Jason Piccolo, who happens to be today's featured guest on the Break It Down show. And he has a show called The Protectors Podcast, and it's about first responders. I also have been a guest on that show, so we're all scratching each other's backs. But this is one of the things about the podcast world that I found, Eric, is that you can go on somebody else's show and expose yourself to their audience in a way that you can't do on radio or anything else. You know, I can right now send an email to KGO, the San Francisco station where I grew up, and get blown off 100 times. You know, I could have the same exact guests as them, and they won't respond for whatever reason. And you know, I don't get why people don't respond in general, but in the podcast world, you're like, hey, you scratch mine, I'll scratch yours. And then my audience wants to hear this stuff. They want to hear how I have a way of structuring questions. I know you do. I have a way of running my show. I know you do. Jason, same thing. So let's talk a little bit about that. And when you built the Unstructured Podcast, first let's talk about your format and how you developed it, and then how much it's evolved since you started.
Cool. Hey, I want to make a point about the industry, though. You were completely right about supporting each other. I feel like in general in the podcasting world, there's an abundance mentality versus a scarcity mentality.
Right.
Literally, it's hey, you come on my show. A few people may check out mine. They may not check out mine, but it's fun. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. And we're both getting exposure to each other and each other's audiences, and we're learning. So it is very unique in that. And I think part of it is because of the decentralization of the actual medium. And now, as far as my show goes, well, it took me over 10 years to actually get off the ground. I often joke that I am a professional podcast listener.
Okay.
I've been listening to podcasts since I heard them on an iPod back in 2004, 2005. So I've pretty much followed them, not since the very beginning, but pretty close to it. Everybody down from, I think, near where you grew up. Petaluma's not too far from there, is it?
That's pretty close. It's in the general vicinity, yeah.
Okay, so the TWIT network, This Week in Tech with Leo Laporte, all of his shows came out of there, and the first show I really got into is Mac Break Weekly. and I'm a big Mac guy,
Yeah.
and thought, wow, this is so cool. I should do a podcast. Maybe I'll do one about Macs.
Right.
And and then of course the iPhone came. I'm a very slow starter. So a couple of years later that comes, and I'm like, well, maybe I could do it on the iPhone. I mean, I'm a technical guy, but I'm listening to all the shows who are doing it, and Leo Laporte's a professional broadcaster. I'm like, well, who's going to really want to listen to me on that?
Oh boy. Yeah.
So then I was like, maybe I'll do it on running, because in 2012, so more years later, I started running. I've done some marathons at 50K, but I never really got it off the ground. And my solution was to just keep buying more equipment. So that was actually going to move me forward.
Right.
I forgot the fact you sort of have to use the equipment for it to be useful.
No roadblocks now that I have the gear. No roadblocks at all. Yes.
Exactly. Wait. Oh, I better get that next piece of gear. So I really can't start until I get that.
Right.
Well, then I just never really got off the ground. And I think it was a matter of, well, I loved running. I was eaten up by running. I listened to every running podcast. But there's only so many stories, and there's only so much to talk about. I then moved on to, during this whole time, I've been listening to audiobooks like Malcolm Gladwell, Freakonomics, Jonathan Haidt, just a lot of, I don't know what you would call the genre, some pop psychology, just different sociology, things like that, some economics. And I was just fascinated by these people. And I happened to catch a few Joe Rogan shows, and I watched those. And I heard Sam Harris griping about another guest on Joe Rogan. Now I'm a contrarian, so I'm like, well, who's this Hunter Motz guy that Sam Harris is whining about? So I went and looked back at the episode and saw that he had Hunter Motz in the third hour chided the hell out of Sam Harris. But I was like, oh, the dude's not that bad. Let me check him out. He's a co-host of Brian Callen for the Brian Callen Show.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. And so I went to listen to it, and it was right about the time they were changing their name of the show to Mixed Mental Arts.
Okay.
But I went to listen to it, and I was like, holy, cow. They had Jordan Peterson on before he was a name.
Right.
They had every author you could think of, like John Rady and Norman Deutsch, these brain scientists. And I was like, this is so freaking amazing. So I got totally caught up into it and joined the community.
Okay.
Problem is that, well, I was the dumbest guy in the community, probably.
Well, there's that.
So, well, what are you going to do? So I decided, you know what? Let me start out my own show and just make it, much more approachable. I could try to talk to these same people, but maybe on a more pub level, because I, feel like I'm more of a blue collar mentality.
Right.
Or soldier, whichever.
Yeah. Wait, so you're 10 plus years in the making to get going and everything, but there is a moment where you're, I can't stand no more. I'm going to do this. Do you remember when that was? Where you're like, God, what do I do? I have everything I need. I'm just going to start recording.
Yeah, ironically, it was because my final act of cowardice was I was looking at having this other guy co-host with me.
Okay.
Because I was like, okay, if I get a co-host, that'll just take so much off of my shoulders. And
Right.
I want to go over that with you too, because I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah,
But-
well, listen, I think a co-host is huge. And I want to go back to one thing you talked about, the scarcity mentality. And I actually want to hold our mutual friend, Jordan Harbinger, accountable a little bit, because he's been on my show twice. I've almost been a guest on his show twice, but he's never quite gotten over the hump on having me as a guest. And not that I don't have the chops to do it, because I can talk spying and culture with anybody, but we just have never gotten around to it. But what aggravates me a little more, and I don't mind saying this publicly because it's true, is I'll have him on the show and I'll do my best to represent his brand well and support him and expose my audience to his audience, but he won't share that episode in his network.
God, they don't.
You know,
Guests don't share for shit.
yeah, and that's and it's not just Jordan, but there are a lot of guests that do share. But so if you
The
are
bigger they are, the less likely they will.
but that's not the best policy though, right? Like here's an area where people want to hear more from you. They don't just want to hear you behind the mic as a host. They want to hear Jordan as a guest. They want us to dig into things they don't know about. And by not sharing those things, instead of humanizing themselves, they dehumanize themselves just ever so slightly. And look,
I agree, but I'm going to push back. I've got a rep for being contrarian a little with guests.
Well, you can push back, but let me finish my point with this thing.
Oh, sure.
But the thing with Jordan is that he doesn't need my help getting an audience. But in general, if you practice that art of being more communicative, if you're the the charm guy, and this is not just Jordan, it's anybody who comes on. It's like, look, pay the bill back by exposing my good work to your audience so they can find another good thing, another good representation of you. And that part I don't exactly get. I mean, I expect every guest is proud of what they create and so that they want to share it. I know that's not true for everybody, and I am holding Jordan a little bit unfairly to task. I'm glad to admit it. But I think in general, any guest, so here's an example. I had Jason Piccolo, who's going to join us in a second here. I had him on my show today, and he shared it out. He posted the link, because I sent everybody the HTML file so they can share it on their website. And he's available. He's like, look, I'm out here in this space talking, doing these things. And it gives your audience, even if they don't know you, another chance to find you, even if it's people from my audience. I don't mind colliding audiences and seeing what happens because it's good for everybody. So I just, in general, I think guests and hosts need to work more on sharing the things, because the more people can encounter, like my episode with Jason is fantastic. I dare anybody to listen to that and not find it to be interesting. Now, you were going to challenge, so please go ahead.
Okay, well, first off, on the premise, I totally agree. I wish the guests would share more. Now, I could speak very specifically to Jordan Harbinger's case.
Okay.
I'm not completely defending him. If Jordan was to share every episode he was on, his feed would be everybody else's show but his own. Now, that it could be criticized saying, hey, wait, you're riding off of everybody's back. And as a matter of fact, I did in my interview talk to him about that are you an expert interviewer or are you really more of an expert guest? Because your brand and your name was built on guesting. And he agreed. It was a great interview. So I kind of understand it in the sense of he's building his brand. And if he shared it all the time, it would just overwhelm the feed, and his audience doesn't want to hear about every other show in the world. But then on the same token, it's like, well, wait a minute, some people could feel like they're being used here a little bit, even though my audience is a pittance compared to his, and a lot of others' audiences is a pittance compared. But our little pittances have all added up over time.
Sure, and there's something to be said for Jordan's time is valuable. Everybody's time is valuable, but he's giving an hour, and that's already a lot. Because at the rate that he bills out at. And I get it that he's a guest on a lot of things, but if you're going to post on social media, why not post a show that you're on? I will say this, no matter how big I get, if I'm on someone's show, when they put that show out, I'm going to do my best to post that thing. I might miss one here and there, but I will never be so big that I can't represent someone else's work that I'm a part of. I'm proud to be on someone else's show, so.
Oh, I am too. And my way of doing that is, my mentality is that I will not go on too many shows that I can't actually promote them.
And when you say promote, it can be a tweet. Just tweet the fucker out.
I agree. Just retweet it, or not even a tweet, just a retweet.
Yeah, and here's the thing is, and again, we're using Jordan as our example, and we're going to say hey to Jason, who's just popped in. But
what's up, guys?
Jordan, he's been on both of our shows, and he's liked the tweets. Why not just slide over a centimeter to the left and retweet?
I don't think he liked mine even.
Aha! I got you.
So there you go. Yeah, you're one up.
Yeah. So everybody, Jason's co-hosting with me. He got caught up on a little bit of stuff. And actually, you cannot anymore last minute him, because I was late to Eric because we had a time conflict thing. And then as I'm setting up, I'm like, oh, I wonder if Jason can do this. So I literally booked Jason as a co-host as I was setting up the equipment. So thanks for making it, Jason.
No problem. I just rushed in from DC. It's been a long day, man.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. We're just talking about podcasts in general, and I've been beating up Jordan Harbinger, who's been a guest on Eric's show and my show. I don't know if you've had him or not yet. He's not a first responder, but he certainly interviewed those guys. And I was just kind of holding him to task, and sort of in general, guests in general. And you don't fall into this category, but when you're on someone's show, on someone's podcast, especially as a fellow podcaster, just lift up the log a little bit with me here and give a retweet, do a share. You did awesome with that. Like, you realize that we're working together, creating something neat. You want your audience to hear from you in a new way. And you don't mind my audience having access to your stuff. And I don't either, because there's plenty of attention to go around. If my show is not good enough to keep my audience's attention, that's on me. And so if your show attracts their attention, goddamn, good job, man. Way to go. But Jordan doesn't do that, and it bugs me a little bit. But I also don't mind having that conversation with him face to face. So we were just talking about that.
I give a ton of props to Eric, because Eric actually went a step further and found an audience that doesn't quite lean on the same networks that I pop up on here, and it was kind of neat that they maybe saw things a little bit different from my point of view. If that makes sense. Especially when it comes to the wall and immigration and everything.
So what is Eric's audience? What do they see? How do they react to your appearance?
I think they're pretty good. It was actually a Facebook group he attached me to after the podcast. I think it went pretty good. What do you think, Eric?
They're open-minded. I mean, everybody I deal with, I'd like to say I pick the best from mixed mental arts. But
yeah,
there's a ton of left-wing people. And there's some right-wing folks. And really, I try to toe the line. I'm fairly non-political. But I don't know where to fall. But I knew that, Jason has appeared on Fox over and over and over. And every outlet, when I researched him, was right-wing. And I thought, well, put him in front of my people, because believe me, there's some hardcore left-wingers in there. I don't know if you've heard of Daniele Bolelli. He does History on Fire. I've had him on. He's a pretty major podcaster. He's in Luminary now. He is definitely left-wing. Definitely left-wing. A history teacher at the school, but he's a really good guy and open-minded. And I think Jason does a good job representing himself as really just, hey, there's a problem, we need a solution. So
in my episode I did with you, Eric, how did I come off politically? It should be right down the middle. That's what I kind of aim for.
I don't think we discuss politics, really.
Good.
I mean, we discuss situations, and that's sort of where I want to go. And I spent a lot of time with Jason talking about that, where, well, let's look at breaking this down. Like, to me, good call back there. Instead of looking at the entire picture, you need to itemize everything and then argue the points. So instead of saying, here's a universal picture and I fall this way or you fall that way, how about we just say, okay, who cares what we think about the big picture? Let's look at the 100 points or the 10 points. Now, point one, let's talk about it. Is this a problem? Yes or no? How do we address it? Yes or no?
One of the things I find interesting is as you dig into something, and since politics is the thing we're kind of on, and I'm asking both of you guys this question, when you look at the greater problem, we're all looking at a different, the part of the elephant that we're seeing, right? Like, am I looking at the tusk? Am I looking at the foot? Am I looking at the poop? Trying to decide what just came through this thing. And so I can say to the both of you, just keep your answer in your head. Don't say it out loud yet, because we'll go to each of you. But if I said the number one thing I'd want from a president is what? And I'm going to ask you first, Eric. What's the number one attribute that, like, they have to have this? What would it be?
Curiosity.
Okay. And then, Jason, what would your answer be?
It'd be listen, and don't listen to these talking heads and everybody else, but just listen to the people who have the ground truth.
Boy, I like the ground truth. You're just speaking my language there. But look at that right there. So a curiosity and a listen, similar parts of that elephant, right? But totally different. And as well as I do, the next person might say honesty, and the next person might say integrity, and the next person might say character. But when you go to look for who we get, I don't know that there are candidates out there. If we took the candidates that were that actually liked most of us, if we took the candidates that had a palatable position for most of us, there'd only be a couple of people there. And then when you started to apply character and other things, it gets really hard for these guys to stand out. So now we're looking at different things altogether than just an elephant, it seems like. What do you think about that, Eric?
Even withstand.
Say it again?
Or to even withstand. Like you mentioned, looking at a candidate, character comes up. Well, what about that candidate who was a doper, stole shit as a kid, or just was not a good kid? He's completely turned around. He learned a lot about life. He's learned humility. He's learned things through hard knocks. Well, sorry, can't have you. You got bad character. So ironically, some of the better candidates, the people who may have that humility, may have that curiosity or understanding, we're just going to cut them out right away. And the only people who are going to get through that door are the people who don't have things stick to them. So you could either have, I'll just use Mitt Romney and Trump as counter examples. Mitt Romney is so freaking clean and bland and non-threatening pretty much all around that he just died. He's just kind of, he's so vanilla, which is ironic because vanilla is the most complicated taste out there, but we'll leave that. And then you have Trump, who is so in your face that nothing sticks to him. He's like Gotti of politicians. He just, everything you throw at him, he's like, yeah, what? Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And, that he was, bought and paid for. Everybody knows, hey.
Yeah, Romney's a good example of this. And I want to get back to the interviewing thing because I think this kind of leads into it. But if you recall when he was running, one of the things he said was, as governor, he's like, I want to make sure we're considering women for these positions. Let's make sure we know who the candidates are. And they basically said, we've got
women and binders.
Right. Instead of being a positive thing, the dicks on the left turned that into a negative thing. And it's like, no, he sees a problem. He's trying to fix it. And so you have this guy that we would all want now instead of the president now. And for a lot of people would rather have Mitt Romney than Donald Trump. But because of the shitty way they treated him, and I'm not giving the right a pass, by the way, we're talking about the left specifically right now. You have this thing. And so then it becomes, instead of someone doing their job as an interviewer and cleaning that up and saying, why is this perceived this way, Mitt? We're left with this perception that somehow having researched and understanding who the qualified women were was somehow a bad thing. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
I think we're just, these mainstream media is just throwing softballs out there. They're kind of giving a heads up on what they're going to talk about, but they don't really delve deep into it. And the only time you see that is when you go into these, 45-minute to 60 minutes. But everything in mainstream media, and because I've been on there, is about a 7-minute soundbite.
Yeah, 7-minute soundbite. Yeah.
In order to get
7-minute segment with multiple 30-second sound bites,
Yeah, exactly.
Heaven forbid you make a mistake or you missay something. Like if the world had recorded everything I said extemporaneously, they'd find out that I make a lot of mistakes, especially when I type. Yeah. I can't see half my mistakes.
Well, that's the thing. Mitt might go up there and do a speech for an hour, but it's just they're hitting them with 30, 40 questions, and they're not. And they have these questions written down, and they're not doing like basic interview interrogation 101 is just talk to them and then just let them talk.
Yeah.
And then dig deeper. And then what? And then what?
Right.
And what? Why? What do you think, Eric?
I think they have an agenda. I mean, the truth is that everyone has an agenda. So I'm going to go one further on that. And some of these aren't necessarily driven by a higher organization. They're driven by an echo chamber situation. Like if you feel one way about something, you tend to hang out with a crowd who feels the same way about whatever your views are. So then a job comes up. Who are you going to recommend for the job? Hey, I'm going to get my buddy in here. Now all of your buddies and you are saying the same thing. And this is left, this is right. So we get the echo chambers in there. So now anytime the questioning is going on, I'm saying that everyone's a bad actor. The truth is that if you go on to the same side who likes you, they will ask the softball questions that will amplify your message. If you go on the side who does not like you, they will ask questions. And manipulate your language in such a manner to put you down or to make you look poor. Or they will constantly strawman you to death. And again, this is left, this is right. It is not, any specific thing. It's weaponizing the language. And the problem is that the people doing it, they believe so strongly in their side. Their Overton window is so far one direction or another that if you're just on the other side of that window, well, you might as well be a Nazi or you're a communist.
Well, that's one thing I see from both you and Eric is when you do the interviews, you're actually not just, because we have time to talk, you're not throwing these softball questions out there. You're digging deep into the story. You're kind of looking at it from all the perspectives, but it takes time.
Yeah, so Jason and I talked about the border wall. We talked about school shootings and a bunch of other things.
Keep it light.
Right? No, but here's the thing, though, right? We didn't talk about them as political means and motives. Just like the stuff today that's in the news with Alabama and the abortion law. Please, I can't be bothered with that. You're talking about something that's so political, there is no solution to what's going on there. It's not even the first step. It's like we're having this national conversation about abortion, and it's had in the courtrooms, it's had in the legislature, and all that kind of thing. And to get into histrionics about something that Alabama does, when you live in another fucking state, Jesus Christ, we've got to find a way to contain our business to within the bounds of our business, right? And so what Jason and I know about is the ground truth. So when we get into the border wall, here's what Jason and I said. Like, there needs to be a lot more capacity so that you can give people aid who are coming into this country and get them processed so we can get them to the next level of aid. I think everybody agrees with that. Like, just about everybody I know is we want immigrants to come here. We just want to know who the heck you are, what kind of help you need, so we can. And we also don't want you dying in the desert from dehydration. So that's how we talked about it. We didn't talk about it as being a wall being moral or immoral or advancing some party's agenda. We talked about it in terms of when you're on the ground and you absolutely have no more time to do anything else and there's people still dying in the desert. Are we better than that? Separated families? Okay, great. More capacity, more federal agents. That's has to be part of that answer.
Sounds good, but how are we doing? Let's take, for example, you could have aid being promised across the line, but then you'll have somebody who, I don't know how to put it, but a great example of this was when one of the bills came up, Trump had backed down a lot of elements of it. And one of the people who voted against it, though, was Ocasio-Cortez. She actually voted with the Republicans against the Democratic bill. Why? Because they funded ICE at all.
Right.
And it's like, this is all purity. And that's part of the problem, too, is I cannot stand purity. I feel like half of the problems with the electorate is I would like, first off, you should not be able to vote down the line by a party. Your sorry ass needs to pick each individual person. That's number one. And they have that. They have it like in, I believe, Oklahoma, where you could just go in and say, give me the Republican ticket, check, boom. All right down the line. That's garbage. I'd like to go one further. I'd like to scramble the names on the ballot in different order and remove party affiliation from all names. So you have to actually research every individual if you go in there, or you could just throw darts at it. I'm fine with either.
What about you, Jason? How do you? I hate to get us derailed into a political conversation, but it seems like that's where we're going. If you could change one thing, what would you change?
Oh man, now we're talking about voting and everything else. I don't know. What would I change? I'd like to really make these politicians see what's going on. I'm so sick of these, 5-minute sound bites down by the border, or they show up here and there, but I want them to actually have to live with the consequences. Meet these families, meet the people working the jobs, or any bill they have to really sign off on, know what the hell they're signing.
Yeah, know what the hell they're signing and understand what the challenges are on the ground. There's a zillion different problems. Let me try to get us back on to hosting a podcast, but this is interesting stuff because it does go to what we do. So Eric and Jason, as you guys approach these conversations, Eric's talking to a variety of people. Jason's more talking to first responder, combat guys like me, that kind of thing. Are you guys thinking politically anywhere near the top of your priority list on how you want to align a conversation? Or is that just sort of an ancillary thing for you? How would you characterize your prioritization of politics in your hosting, Eric?
Unless I'm interviewing someone who is specifically a party type, like I've had Austin Peterson, libertarian runner-up presidential candidate, I went political on him because that's who he is. He's a politician. I have Dr. Chris Meltzler coming on, or Metzler, sorry. He is a known black conservative that's very relevant to him because that's his whole identity. He is a black conservative pundit. I speak about that. Same thing with Congressional Dish. Jennifer Briney, her whole function in life is watching C-SPAN, so we don't have to. And trailing Congress. So with them, yes. Anyone else? No. Because what does it get me? What's the relevance?
So you're prepping for Jason's interview, and I'm going to come back to Jason on that same question. You're prepping for Jason's interview, and you see the kind of work he's done, more on the first responder side, more on the action side, and you think to yourself, I'm not worried about politics in this one, and so you're just kind of not even prepped for that. Is that fair to say?
With him, actually, okay, I'll back off a little because I did think politically, but I thought the best way I could help Jason is to challenge him as much as possible.
No, that's exactly what you did, and I'm glad you did. I look forward to the challenge. I want to talk about, it's not just a black and white situation at the border. It's very gray. And I like when people actually talk about all these different aspects of it. Like me, the big thing you'll see is I'll be like, hey, you know what? I'm pretty straight down the line. I believe in border security, but I also believe in addiction counseling. No, I believe in addiction. It's a 3-sector policy. It's the stuff going on down south. It's the smuggling. It's the human trafficking. You got to secure the border one way or the other. And then you also have to have addiction counseling up here because, it's supply and demand up here. And as long as you have people demanding narcotics, you're always going to have it, and that's one of the things that I always think about whenever I talk. I want to portray that view out there, but it's always a 7-minute soundbite where it's like, hey, let's talk about the wall.
Yeah, let's talk about the wall because that's what sells the ads, right? Because getting people to go crazy about the wall, and hopefully they go crazy in both directions, where they're super stoked about the wall, and they're also commenting on everything about the wall because they hate you for talking about the wall. Like, those aren't the seeds that I think we're trying to sow. Is that right?
No, and one thing, just to backtrack to, the question about Eric and politics and everything, is my podcast is the same. I do not talk about politics at all, and that's why I started the podcast, is because I wanted to have inspirational stories from people on the ground. That could be military, law enforcement, first responders, and those that support them. And if anybody kind of heads into the political direction, I kind of push it out.
Kind of just start to change the subject or go,
Exactly.
kind of laugh with it and go. Or you know what? Here's another trick. Cut it and post. Let them get it out their spleen and just cut that part out.
I did that the other day with the guest. I'll never say who it was, but they got into a lather and they got going, and I'm like, okay. So here's one of the things that I do. I edit in my head as I'm talking. Like I'll do an example. I'll start to say something, and I'll start to say something, and I'll realize it's not going the way I want to go, and I'll say it again. And I'll also hear what Eric says, and maybe I prompt him to say it again, or maybe I ask the question in a clearer way, and I'll cut all the stuff that I don't want out. The content is still the same, but I just get the better version of Eric because he gets a second shot at it, or I get a second shot at it most of the time.
Well, that's cool. We can talk methodology now.
Say it again?
We can talk methodology now. No, because this is, I think people will be interested in.
Yeah. So are you guys editing live in your heads? I mean, obviously you don't do it in the moment, but you're like, edit point, let me fix this now.
I am, except mine's different. My goal in life is to be doing a live show. So
Okay.
I try to pretend that every interview is live. I get one shot. If I screw it up, I say I screw it up and I roll with it. So it's a little different. I like what you're doing. That's giving a more polished show. But I'm kind of trying to walk a high wire. So yes, I'm editing my head, but I'm trying to shape my message as I go. Can be excruciating at times, but I'm planning for no edit. I'm planning for recorded live.
I like it. What about you, Jason?
I like that too. No, I think that's great. And I'm a novice podcaster, so I'm learning for both of you guys. And what I usually do is I usually keep a notebook next to me, and I just take. Someone makes a call for anything, I'm looking at the time. I do a little check mark, say, okay, go back there and make sure that's fixed. Definitely. I'm kind of editing on the fly because my shows are only going 25, 50 minutes. But I am trying to polish it up. And that means having good audio, good conversations straight through. But I love what Eric's talking about. A live broadcast would be perfect. And listening to you both when we talk, I always, and I don't know if this is because I'm on TV or anything, I'm always listening for the ums or the uhs and the and my whole thing is just make sure if anybody, even a guest, does that, I make a little check mark and make sure that you try to get that out.
We don't want machines, and I will go through if somebody's an machine or stammering and wait, I was stammering and I'm I'm going to go through it because that's just going to make everybody freaking crazy. But I'm still going to treat everything as live, so it's a weird compromise. I do know that later on, the machine's going to get out if I actually do a live show.
Now, that's one thing I want to ask both of you. Now, audio podcast, do you plan to go visual in the future?
If I could avoid it, I'd never do it. I think I may do something with like Get Vocal. That's something you guys may want to check out too. We could talk about it offline, but yeah, people come in and out and it's really cool.
I don't see the need for video in terms of the quality of the show that I create. Who the hell cares if I'm sitting there and you can look at me talk to somebody else? I know there's a lot of shows that do that, and that's a very normal format. But I also like to polish the show. I like to have the guest be as clean and clear as possible. So that means jump cuts in video, and it means a lot more time in production. So I would rather produce more quality audio content and then maybe create a whole new show where it's me and a very high profile guest in 2 chairs and 2 ferns, that kind of thing. But in terms of the Break It Down show, yes, but I don't know what that is. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep pumping out 4 shows a week so that, I was already a good interviewer before I started this business. Jason, you know how it is when you're in the field talking to people every day. I have had so many interviews before I ever started this that I already had a high level, and I've tuned those tools and I've identified them. So for me, the audio stands up on its own. And if someone doesn't have time for that, then they're not part of my audience. They're just not into what I'm into. I would rather have a deep, involved conversation and then the video be secondary. But I do recognize that video has its place in the market.
That leads me on to the next thing, too, is Eric. Now, the Break It Down shows, they go mobile. And that's kind of my next step is going mobile. Running out there with the mobile setup, talking to people
Sure.
in their settings. Now, do you plan on doing that in the future?
I have done it. Not much, but 3 of my interviews were at Podcast Movement. I'll be at MapCon this year. That's not far away from you. We should, well, I don't know if it is or not. It's in Atlantic City. You're closer to DC, right?
Yeah, I'm right up the road from you, I think. I think we're almost neighbors. Atlantic City's my hometown. I'll go with you. Let's go.
Okay, well, that's an example. I'll be doing live interviews there with people. But in general, I'm in Hampton Roads. Who am I going to talk to? There's not a really lot of higher profile people. And to be honest, it's a pain in the ass in my eyes because I have a day job. I have to get that done. I can get done from the day job, quickly change clothes and jump right on this microphone. Boom. I've got a video session. I've wasted almost no time. It's part of the reason I like running because I get home, throw on the clothes, get on my shoes, and I'm running on the sidewalk. I don't have to drive to the gym, go get a shower, and waste all this time. Any way I can cut the time out, I need to. I just don't have the time to handle this stuff.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
Reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner,
or at JohnLG69.
at The Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Go get a shower and waste all this time. Any way I can cut the time out, I need to. I just don't have the time to handle this stuff.
Well, that brings us where, it seems like every podcaster I know is a full timer. I mean, we have day jobs and, we all have our different setups right now. I'm looking at all three of you, well, two of you, and we're all looking at different setups. And that's the thing is, if we're talking about podcasts, everybody always likes to know about what kind of equipment you're using and how you get it going.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I use. I use a Zoom H6, which you can see right here is live. And right now I'm using a Shure lavalier mic. I think it's a XM93. And I do those things. And I normally have a headset, and that's right over here too. But I have specific reasons for doing that. One, I want a mic that's focused on my mouth, not omnidirectional. Two, not all my guests are seasoned on the mic. Some of them are rookies. So if I put a mic right there in their mouth with a boom mic, then they can't get away from where I want the mic to be the whole time. It makes them sound better, gives the audience a better experience. And my setup is super small. And I'll show you my headset. That's my headset right there. That's nothing. It's the smallest headset you can have, basically, for a reasonable amount of money. So I hope people ask me about my setup, because I don't want you to have to, for someone who wants to be mobile and portable like I am, I don't want you to have table stands or booms or anything else. I want your stuff to go in one bag, not even as big as a backpack, so you can get out there and get after it with the quality.
So go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, if you are doing mobile, though, make sure you get a mic that doesn't reflect hand noise. That's really, really important.
I got to give you props to Eric, because I was using that Blue Yeti. And
Oh, God.
I gave it to my son now. He uses it for gaming, but now I'm using this Audio Technica, and I love it. Just a handheld mic, sit on my couch, and I can just talk. I can do my podcast anywhere now.
So Eric, give us another pro tip. You said get a mic that doesn't pick up hand noise. You're obviously using a mega badass mic, that Shure mic that you're using. What's another pro tip?
Okay, well, one, real quick to Jason, I can hear the hand noise on your microphone. Try wrapping your cord up and hold the cord wrapped in a loop by your microphone on the side, and that'll eliminate that.
Okay.
And don't forget, I got you. I'll clean you up. Just like I did this morning.
But there you go. That's a tip. Don't spend too much money. Another pro tip is just get something out there, and you can do it on the sly. Like, I'd recommend, if you want to do a show, you don't know exactly what you want to do. Like, let's say it's a solo show. Go on Anchor, get your freaking phone in a closet, and go in a closet, and you can record very cleanly on an iPhone into the Anchor app or Android and Anchor app, and it's free. You could just share it with a few friends and just do it a few times. See, get a rhythm, get a voice, figure out what you want to do. If you really like it, you just download the audio and you put it up in a real host. If you don't like it, well, who cares? It's out there. Because the truth is that, like anything else, you got to suck.
You got to
suck for a while.
Yeah.
I definitely learned that lesson. My first few episodes, and I had really good guests on too, the first few, and I feel really bad for bringing them on a crappy audio sounding podcast, and now learning how to clean it up and learning how to learning today how to get rid of hand noise. But those types of things, I kind of feel like, and I know you both have probably had this issue, is where like you're done with an episode and you're like, man, I think I screwed up that audio. Did I ask?
If you're ever satisfied, you're not a podcaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you do have a point where you have to say this is going up. Like, I've got a couple shows now that just aren't good enough quality, and I will re-record those. And I'll tell the guests, like, it's just not good enough. I don't want to put this out there for you. I want you to have something better. And there needs to be that line. Anything above that line is publishable. Get it the fuck out and get it on to the next one. You can't slow down for perfection. It's all about production in our world. Otherwise, you're going to get smashed by your ego and your fear. And so you have to put it out.
Sure. And what's ironic, and I'm sure both of you have had this, I've gone into interviews thinking, especially when I'm done and through the interview, I'm like, oh, this is going to be the best freaking interview ever. Then I listen to him like, I really kind of dropped the ball there. Man, I really had the curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
And then another one, I'm like, oh, I just don't know about this. I just don't know. I mean, I guess it's okay, but... And then I get feedback from a bunch of people. They're like, oh, my God, that was amazing. And while I'm editing, I'm like, it's not that bad, really. I can't make sense of it. It's sort of like, what show is going to be popular? I'm sure you guys have put a show out. You're like, oh, I got this guest. It's going to be amazing. Everybody's going to line up around the block to listen to it, and it's crickets. Then you put somebody out nobody's ever really heard of, and it just gets legs. And that's where I'm trying to focus so much more on content and stories. And I recommend another pro tip: stop chasing the influencers.
Exactly. And that's one thing about some of these guests I've had on. I had Vic Avalon, and he was an ICE agent down in Mexico, and he got ambushed. And I told him in the beginning, because Vic and I are friends, and I'm like, we don't really have to go into the ambush. But he went into it, and it was the most amazing 20 minutes of a story I've ever heard in my life. And this is coming from someone that's been in law enforcement almost 20 years and war and everything else. But when Vic told me that story, man, it was like the best thing ever. But then I'm like, well, how do I promote this? So that's the next step. Yeah, definitely. You have to check it out.
Headliner.app, pull harrowing points and leave it at a cliffhanger. So it's about a minute of audio. You do it with, the audio band underneath and the transcriptions there popping underneath. I was about to see it. I look up, there was a gun in my face. Boom. That's it. That's how you promote it.
Say that app again so everybody can hear it.
Headliner.app, literally .app.
So
fantastic. It's free.
I'm going to kick out a pro tip for everybody, and this is not a common thing, and this is truly an advanced skill, so don't feel like you have to get right into it. But the less you say, the more you can use sound or silence to your advantage, the better questions you'll ask. And the less you ask interrogative-based questions, which are closed questions, the better. Now, you ask a closed question for sure when you want to take control of a conversation. So a closed question is, isn't that true, Eric? Yes or no? A yes, no kind of question. But also, closed questions are who, what, where, when, why, how. If you can avoid those interrogatives when you start your question, you're going to get to a deeper state of the guest's mind where they're sorting through something. If you open with an interrogative-based question, that's fine. Recognize your mistake and then ask them for their opinion or to surmise or to expand. Give me more on this. Give me an example of that. Those things, those questions that aren't questions, are infinitely more powerful and unlock your guest's mind and give you control in a way where it never seems like you've done a thing, but you're total control of a conversation that's running wild and free. So everybody sees a wild pony running for their fence, and they have no idea the whole time you're masterminding this conversation. So avoid interrogatives. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is the best thing you can do.
There are times that it can be useful, though, especially as you put it when you're trying to gain control or you want to send somebody running down a particular trail.
For sure. Yeah, to seek control, absolutely. Close the question off.
The worst thing in the world is, so tell me about yourself. Please never say that. Please never say that, because I'll probably think about shutting it off immediately. I want to know very specifically, why do you have this person on your show? Why do I care? So that's a perfect example of a leading. It would be like, Pete, I understand that you're a spy in the Army. How does that work? Now, I very specifically went down a tighter path here. Or what makes somebody want to do that? Now, you may have a short statement, but then I can spawn out. We've established a direction.
You could also say, though, hey, Pete, I heard you were a spy in the Army. And just do that. And let that silence ask the question.
That's true. And I know what you're doing with the Dan Rather element on that, but it doesn't always. That silence usually is great in a follow-up, especially when you answer something and then I just shut up.
Well, keep in mind, too, I edit my show, so I take that silence and I can shorten it up so it's a short question.
Oh, no, I totally agree. But I'm saying that it's also effective, not in me asking you the question, but when you give me an answer, if I just sit there silently, you may continue because it's uncomfortable.
A lot of silence right there. A lot of silence.
Leaving room for you, Jason.
I'm looking at it as an interview and interrogation because I've had, I don't know how many hundreds of people across the desk for me. And this, it's almost like you want to give someone an out. Now, Pete knows what an out is. I'm sure you do too. It's where you always kind of like when you're talking to someone and you hit a silent or a dead spot where the conversation is going nowhere. Well, you think in your mind, how am I going to get them to talk some more? And how am I going to get them to hold on to their story or grasp something? And that's the thing. It's like when you're talking to someone, give them out like, hey, so, there you were, blah, blah, blah. You committed that war crime, didn't you? And they're like,
there's your out.
No, there's your out. No. And then they start talking. The hell no, I didn't. And this is why I didn't do it.
Well, and I'm sure that when you guys are interrogating or something, you might be like, I don't know, you see a piece of jewelry on them if they have it, if they're civilian, you'd be like, that's a nice ring.
Yeah. The thing with any kind of field expedient interview or interrogation, you're trying to do very specific things. And so let's say that, there's 100 questions that I want to get the answer to. Where are the bombs? Who are the bad guys? What's going to happen next? Those kind of questions. And those are questions that are asked in a vacuum by people who aren't on the ground and have the ground truth. So I literally can't go up to someone and say, where are the bombs? Because that's just never going to get answered. There's nobody that does it like that successfully that I've ever met. So you've got to have the question before that. And then what's the question before that? And what's the question before that? So you reverse plan your questions to hopefully get to the place where you're at. But because you can't always get to where are the bombs, you have little branches to break off of that stream and into another one so that whatever topic you're into, you can get to one of your goal questions because they're not leading questions, but they're questions that allow an answer that you can use to get to the next level answer. Does that make sense?
Sure. But the thing, too, that's interesting is you guys are both coming from interviews that matter. No offense, but I'm coming from the entertainment side. I'm doing this. Hopefully we learn something. Hopefully we have a good time. Hopefully we have an engaging conversation. You're coming from, okay, this is life or death. Soldiers will potentially die. And you're kind of almost tempering it down. I'm sort of coming from the whole, well, I don't want to piss them off necessarily, but I also want to generate content that is interesting to my audience. Like, I don't know, we weren't even 2 minutes into it and I was pushing Pete back. But I do that a little bit, not necessarily hard. I know I pushed Jason, but some of that's to help.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Now, do you do your homework, both of you guys, on who your guests are going to be? Or do you want to go in there cold? What kind of let the conversation?
Go ahead, Eric.
Homework, 6 to 10 hours on average. And the weird thing is, though, I'm also willing to throw it all out. So a lot of times the homework is just to get an idea of who they are or how they're built in my mind, or to get possibly a handle that I can go down. Like I might do a Mark Maron type of speculation to draw something out. I don't know. It's very instinctive. An example, Chris Voss, he's been interviewed, dozens of times. He's big time interviewee, FBI negotiator. How do you go into that one? My angle was just by listening to him and getting a vibe about him and his personality. I was saying, you're from Iowa, right? He's like, yeah. I said, then why do you, is this like in the Army? I said, you sound like you're from New York. I said, is it like in the Army where everybody sounds Southern over time? Does that happen with FBI guys in New York? And he just starts laughing and he starts going, well, yeah, you got to hang out with the cops. And so I'm trying to get either a piece of insight or a laugh or just something to where we can early on, especially, maybe be human.
I suppose my answer to this question might sound a little bit arrogant, but understand that it comes from hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of interview time. I do a level of prep to where I'm comfortable with the lack of prep that I've done. So, I know that I can talk to Eric because Eric has a podcast. So that checks a lot of blocks off of my list. And then because I've asked a million questions, there's no question that I'm uncomfortable with. So I can find something, and if I find an area that doesn't work, I know how to back out of it and go forward again. So a lot of my prep is already done in where I've been. It doesn't mean that I don't have prep. It doesn't mean that I'm not looking for something in particular, but if I do go into Eric's background and look, I'm looking for one or two things, and once I have that, I'm good. I don't need to do anything else because everything else will show up. One area where I make an exception to that is if I have someone that's done a zillion interviews, I want to ask original questions or purposely acknowledge all of the questions that have been, like we had Josh Montz on the show, and Josh Montz was shot and killed by a sniper 12 years ago. He was dead for 15 minutes and they brought him back. Holy shit, that's incredible. Everybody's covered it. So right up front, you say, that's all good. Josh has done a lot of things since he died. Let's get into those things. And then you let Josh be incredible at that point because he is, like, the dude is alive. So you just let him do all of the work. And this is that whole thing of I'm in control of the conversation, but I'm letting him run as fast as he can. And every now and then I nudge him towards where I want to go. That's where my prep is going is not in the specifics of the person's background, because they'll tell me all that stuff if I want it, but in how do I get this person going as fast as I can, as soon as I can.
Yeah, it's just a stylistic thing. You're doing more of the Larry King.
Sure.
Larry King goes in blind, literally. You just say who the name, what's their name, and what do they do. He's off. That's all he wants. Both have their place.
Sure.
I'm totally into both. I mean, I'm a walking contradiction. I do a ton of research. I have a ton of prep questions, but then I have an informal conversation. Go figure.
Mine is a scratch pad, and I like to have, the basic concept, but I'm learning. I'm learning this podcast thing big time that you got to really, I'm leaning towards doing a little bit more research and letting the conversation go where it goes. But the other thing too is originality. And both of you guys have mentioned that, is having original questions, because a lot of these guests, your guests, my guests, everybody's guests have, they've been asked the same exact questions, and you could tell when they go from, they're having like a really good conversation to the canned response. It's a complete tonal change.
Talking point time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's like, okay, you've been interviewed by me, Jason. How many of my questions have you heard before?
Now, that's one thing I give a lot of kudos to both of you is I've never really talked like we talked. It was really this just very open conversation type. So, I don't remember ever getting answered. Somewhere like, the basic, when you throw the wall in there, you could probably tell when I go right into the canned response, because I have 50 talking points for the wall and the border and immigration. It's just because they're the things I know. That's my subject matter expertise. But when we start talking, like Pete and I went off way off on the edge, talking about, our terrorism days and, how we could vet people and all this other stuff. And nobody ever asked me like the real questions about the real security issues at the border. But both of you guys have hit on those aspects, which, you could tell there's research there.
Yeah. And again, a lot of my research is field time, right? I know about screening and vetting and what it takes. And when you tell me 10,000 people or 100,000 people show up at a gate, and I look around, they're like, there's 4 more of me. This line is never going to get anything but longer. There's a problem right there we can discuss all day long. And you know how hard it is to sit there and just crank out, in good quality interviews that are assessing a person, and you get one shot. It's like, why would you talk about anything else except for to describe how impossible gaining access to this country is to an interview? Like, yeah, most of my interviews are gonna be shit because you can only do so good with that. That to me is infinitely more interesting than whether or not a wall is moral or not, because there are not enough people to even handle what's coming through. So wall, no wall, Walmart, who fucking cares?
Right. And Jason and I went into my bent on legalization to help stem some of the demand. There's different policies and angles.
Well, that's one thing. The next question is, how do you avoid those rabbit holes? Because, we can go down rabbit holes all day long when it comes to something, but you don't want to get your audience disengaged from what the original topic was.
2 ways: change the subject or editing later.
Editing. I think that should be the next question for both of you guys. Is your editing style? What are you doing?
Editing wise, in general, I will run through Isotope, for example, try to clean up. For example, somebody uses a Yeti, try to pull the reverb out, things like that. Just some basic automatic things. Then I would go through and listen. If they're not an machine, I'm going to be very, very light in the touch. And I'll just go through, skip chunks, be like, okay, good, okay, good, okay, good. If they're an machine, then I'll be like, let me cut some of these out. I won't cut them all out because then they don't sound human. People naturally will say and occasionally. But you might have somebody who says, 3 times in 10 seconds. That's a little much. Now, pro tip on that, I got this from Jason Piccolo. Jesus. I completely blanked the name, but Jason of Jordan Harbinger show. DeFilippo.
Say it
By
again.
the way, the 2 Jasons I did a week apart, Jason DeFilippo and Jason Piccolo, are back-to-back episodes. So that threw my brain for a loop. Anyway, Jason DeFilippo pointed out, pro tip, that as you're cutting the ums out, later on in the show, you can cut fewer of them because people get used to them as they go along.
That's true.
So that's pretty much it. And then tag on the intro, tag on the end pieces, and then run it through Auphonic to bring the levels to the same volume on both sides.
I do something totally different.
Imagine that.
Well, and I know Eric knows some of these things. Like, I'm having him record his track. So ideally, I would have Jason record his as well, because that's the best way to get the most quality in the first shot. I want to put the best show I can into the can the first time. So if I'm going in a rabbit hole, I don't want to go there. I just say stop, and I'm the producer at that point. I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about, and you change the subject, and you do it. I'm doing it directly and abruptly here. And sometimes I do that in the studio, but usually it's a lot more gentle, and they won't even know, and I'll just cut that unwanted piece out. I'll just edit that live in my head and remember, okay, I changed gears there, and I have to go ahead and change that around. But the other thing that I do is I go in, I fix the sound that's there, I take out unwanted noise, and I'm looking to do as little as possible, because the more you do, the longer it takes. I'm going to go pull those ums and ahs out. Jason is right. As you go along, the ums and ahs tend to disappear unless the person is really colloquial and it's just everywhere. And then sometimes I just leave that stuff because it's not fair to that person and how they talk. But I do spend a lot of time cleaning those things out. I try to find the least amount of work I can do to make the best representation of that person. And so that is most of it. And I would say way over 90% of the time, I don't touch any of the content points other than just to take out stutters and stumbles. I don't touch anything that they say unless they say, hey, take this part out. And that's really less than 10% of the time that happens. So most of my editing is thorough. I go through the whole show. It takes a long time, but I'm looking for very specific things to clean up. And that's mostly what I do. I would say I clean up, and that's the bulk of what you see. But I'm very particular about how I clean up.
Now, one thing I see you doing, Pete, is you're interviewing people at a restaurant.
Yeah.
and it is a very natural environment. And one thing I like about it is you're in nature. That restaurant is nature because you're hearing the clanging of the dishes in the background.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels natural for the audience. I think that's kind of a cool point if you're out there going in public, that you're not just, you're not editing out that element.
Yeah, I like to. So, and there is some magic that's going on with that sound. Like for a long time, I didn't have all the same mics, and that's probably always going to be the case. And so one of them will pick up more sound than the others, and I'll usually bury the sound of that channel, but only bring in the background noise. It's purposeful when it's there, and how much I leave it in there. And sometimes it's completely taken out. But I like the vibe of it. Not everybody does, so I am mindful of that. But there is some artistry going on for sure when I'm managing that part of what I do.
One thing on the double ending, by the way, you mentioned I'm recording my side. That's called a double ender for anyone listening. I actually use software called Squadcast that double ends through a browser, so it takes care of that for me. And the moron Eric, it appears, has left a freaking tab open. So let me go chase that one down. All right, there we go. Yeah, another pro tip. Close tabs, especially Facebook, so you don't have the dings and dongs.
Da-dong! Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap this up because we've been doing this for quite a while, and you guys got other things to do. But I wanted to just, in general, the two of you have been doing podcasts. Jason, yours is new, you're on the way, and I'm excited for you. So let's ask you first. Since you started your show just a short time ago, how have you evolved?
More relaxed, not being just jumping into it, being, hey, you know what, tell me about this, blah, blah, blah. Just being more relaxed, letting them talk. Because being on the other side of the mic a million times more than my own podcast, I'm used to doing a lot of the talking, but I'm learning to just sit back, relax, let the conversation flow. So that's what I'm learning.
And Eric, your evolution is going to be more severe. So describe the biggest area of growth that shocks you the most.
The biggest thing that I learned was I started out wanting to kiss every guest's ass and make it all about the guest to be my friend. I came to learn over time, though, that it's about the show and it's about the audience. And that was a hard-won lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, those are great answers. Those are perfect, such great notes on being a host, because turns out everybody thinks they know how to host a podcast until you got to do that shit and listen to what you say. Oh man. You think you don't like your voice, then you listen to the words that you pick and you're like, I am the world's biggest dick. I can't say anything right. And it's so funny when you realize your ass kissery, your ego, you're not listening, all these things that you think you're doing and you're clearly not doing. It's a shocker. So anybody who's trying to do a podcast should definitely accept the fact that they're going to make a lot of mistakes and they're going to be way too hard on themselves, and they should ease up a little bit and just keep creating. You'll get better no matter what.
Every podcast is a journey podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I use Anthony Iannarino's example. He says, and this is true for so many things, it's like swimming. If I described to you how to do the Australian crawl, you would die. You would die. You would I made it 2 feet and had to get back to the wall. How do I, hosting is not easier than that. You're putting yourself out there to do something that's exceptionally hard. And my stroke when I swim, and I swim quite a bit now, is totally different than someone who's fast and efficient and done it their whole life. I've swum my whole life, but I've not swum laps my whole life. So Though I know how to swim laps, I can swim indefinitely. My stroke totally different than Eric's stroke, totally different than Jason's. And that's all right. It's all right to know that. My stroke is I like to say my stroke when I swim, literally, is like a sanitation truck, like the shitter sucker truck. It ain't pretty. You don't want to look at it, but I'll be goddamned. At the end of the day, I'm touching the wall over and over again like everybody else.
That is a great analogy, right?
Perfect note to hang up on there.
All right, fellas. Well, listen, let's do some more of these. These are fun. And
that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on. I appreciate you, Jason, a last second hopping in, man.
Hit me up whenever you need a co-host. Same thing, Eric. If you want to do the Atlantic City thing, man, I'll cruise down there. What is that you're going to?
I'm speaking at MapCon up there. So Mid-Atlanta Podcast Concert.
Very cool.
Conference,
Nice.
Sorry.
When is that? Plug that so everybody can hear.
September 6th through 7th in Atlantic City.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I know this is kind of just a fun thing, but there is so much to learn about podcasting. So many people ask me questions about all these things, and we got the stuff that people don't normally ever even get to. So we got a good show in here, and I'm really proud of it. And I appreciate you guys for being my friends and coming on.
Well, thank you, man.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Eric.